Greetings. Welcome to the fourth class in this third semester of the Emerald Choral Academy. I'm Gary Cannon, the Artistic Director of the Emerald Ensemble, a professional choir based in Seattle. This Emerald Choral Academy is a series of interactive webinars during which our area's leading professional choristers reveal their personal tricks of the trade to community singers. These webinars are then made available freely to singers across the world via YouTube. This presentation is funded in part by a grant from the Washington State Arts Commission, in addition to the National Endowment for the Arts, For Culture, the Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, and many generous donors. We encourage anyone participating or viewing this webinar to make a donation as you are able at emeraldensemble.org. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and join our mailing list to hear about future sessions of the Academy and other activities of the Emerald Ensemble. This webinar is being recorded. By participating, you are granting the Emerald Ensemble permission to share your contribution. Your microphones and cameras will remain off for the duration of the presentation. You can, however, ask questions to the presenter by typing into the chat or Q&A features at the bottom of your screen. And then periodically, I will interject to field your questions. I'm sitting here today in the company of two esteemed individuals. First, I introduce Scott Kovacs, the Executive Director of the Emerald Ensemble. He devised the Academy and he has worked extensively to secure its continuation. Send him emails of gratitude, please. Seattle is a soprano-blessed city. And today's instructor is a true expert in our topic, hitting the high notes. I met Rebekah Gilmore while singing together in the Tudor Choir, where I had the great pleasure of hearing her sing those terrifyingly high notes in the Allegri Miserere and other pieces many, many times. Rebekah is one of the Emerald Ensemble's regular sopranos, and she holds the longest title of anyone at St. Mark's Cathedral. The Associate Musician and Director of the Cathedral Choir School and the Interim Minister of Youth. Did I get all that right? Is that right? Okay, I think so. And so here to discuss hitting the high notes, I present to you Rebekah Gilmore.
Hello, everyone, and special thanks to Gary and to Scott and to the Emerald Ensemble for having me. This is a topic that I have lived in and with and have grown through throughout my career. And as Gary said, for many years, I sang so many of those sort of, those angel sounds, right? But that is, when we're talking about choral, soprano, high note singing, there are so many facets to this. I'm a little distracted at the moment because I'm seeing an Emerald Ensemble screen. I don't know. Gary, maybe mute yourself. Yeah, I think that.
Thank you. Sorry.
Sure. No problem. No problem. Well, so welcome to my living room, everyone. Hopefully it will go back here shortly to showing my face rather than just an Emerald. Are other people just seeing the Emerald Ensemble emblem? Okay, good. All right. Well, if you can see me fine, then that's fantastic. So I first of all want to say that I'm going to lean into imagery and sensations as I talk to you about different facets of how we approach high singing. I'm not going to give a lot of technical speak. When I'm in heavy moments of singing choral music and trying to get a job done, having some images in mind is really helpful to me, and I hope that I can pass some of those things on to you. I know as soon as someone tells me to drop my larynx or relax my tongue, often the opposite happens. So I'm going to try to give you images that you can latch on to, and I hope that you can glean something from that. To start off, I hope that this doesn't feel too much like just a voice lesson, but I do want to set some framework because some of the very basics, when we are nervous and we see that G or that A coming down on the bottom line of a page and your heart beats a little faster, the basics are what's going to anchor you. So let's together, you can choose to phonate at home or not, but let's together make some noise and think about how our body is situated as we're approaching some of these notes that make our heart race a little bit, right? All right, so to set the stage, let's talk a little bit about when you're really good at singing high notes. You're probably in the shower, I would guess, and you are rocking it. Well, why are you rocking it when you are in the shower singing your high notes? Probably, am I by myself? I don't think so. I think I'm not the only one that's really good at singing high notes in the shower. Part of that is simply how relaxed your body is. You know the music that you're singing it by memory. You're not struggling with notes, right? Reading it on the page. There's no sort of sight singing anxiety that's creeping into your person as you're doing that. You are alone. Your body is as it is, probably standing upright. And that positioning is such a gift for your high note singing. So just ponder for yourself what your body feels like when you are in those positions of, wow, the notes worked really well for me just now. And let's go through some of that. All right. So we have I'm not going to speak specifically to sopranos all the time, just as a side note, but obviously that's my lived experience. And I know we have a lot of sopranos on joining us today. So there'll be moments that I'll chat with you all, but I think a lot of this is applicable across the board, no matter what your voice part is. So as Gary said, I teach the choristers at St. Mark's Cathedral. And so, of course, my job is to teach good choral posture. We have positions. Position 1 is your standing position. Position 2 is your seated to sing position. Position 3, your at rest position. With adults, I almost never say any of that. The reason being that when you're an adult and you're told to stand up straight, even as a child, when you're told to stand up straight, there's unfortunate placement that happens in a body. Standing up straight is a rigid stance a lot of the time. Sitting up straight with your back away from the back of the chair is a rigid position more often than not. Rigidity is not your friend when trying to sing high notes. So the first order of business, when you're seated in a choir, in a choral rehearsal, I invite you to rest your back against the back of your chair, but do so with a straight back, and this will get to what I'm going to lean into in a little bit, which is your car warm-ups on your way to rehearsal. We'll talk about that in a minute. So first of all, as you're seated in your chair, you're going to want to, am I stressed out in this trying to look alert position, or is my body relaxed? When you're standing, same thing. Am I rooted? Am I grounded down? Or am I pulling my energy up in sort of nervous anticipation? So a deep grounding down. Let's talk about that and stand up. You don't have to stand up, but I'm going to as I describe some of these things. So I'm going to use the word firm a lot today as I encourage us to hold our bodies in a certain way. Firm rather than tight, or rather than gripped. Open, open, open all the way down. So, you're always told your legs, shoulder width apart and all of that kind of stuff. Fantastic. But I want to encourage a different kind of openness as you do that. And I'm not just talking chest or gut, though I'm talking all the way down, imagining that you have sort of a beam of light that goes straight from the crown of your head all the way down to the ground. Okay, this might be a little uncomfortable, but just stick with me. You really have to go to the bathroom. the release that you feel when you do. That openness all the way down, people. Just laugh at me. I don't care, but you're going to remember it and you're going to own it in your choir rehearsal. Open, open, open. That low in your body. And when you do that openness, you'll feel very rooted from the bottom part of your body. All right. Then let's scan up to your abdominal area. Now, I know we've got a lot of sopranos, and I know for me anyway, there was a habit that I came to, I don't know, probably around puberty, where I would put on a bathing suit, and when I had to walk out of the changing room, you know, to go to the pool, I would suck in. I'd suck in my abs. I was a skinny little teenager, but whatever, that's, you know, other issues at play. So I'd suck everything in. And we gained this sense that that is what standing tall and looking good looks like. That too is the opposite of where we want to go for grounding our high notes. There'll be lots of, to go high, you must be grounded low. And this is what we're doing. So your abdominal area, if you're standing up right now, or even if you're seated, feel the release of your abdominal area, not being worried about how skinny you look or anything like that. That's also why what you wear kind of matters. Oh, here, I'm going to turn off my video for a second so you can see. There, that's what I wear most of the time right now when I'm singing. I'm wearing a huge choir robe, which is a gift. But when I'm doing other kinds of gigs, I have to be aware if I'm going to feel self-conscious, really opening myself up. So we've moved to the abs, a really wide open abdominal area, released, full, but firm. We'll get to the firm part in a second when we do a little more breathing work. So then move up to the rib area. And if you can, some of you have experienced this with me. If you can, take your hands and put them across your back, right about here, and touch your fingers together. Take a breath in through your nose and separate your fingers. Feel that expansion. We're super used to being focused on our front as we're expanding our rib cage, but I really encourage you to lean into your back ribs, expanding and being the source of strength without grip to keep everything elevated and your lungs able to move freely. So that expansion across your back as you take a breath in. We'll do some breathing exercises in a moment, and we'll do that. Next, scanning upwards to your neck. So my dad's a pastor. He was a pastor, and he wore those clergy collars. You know what I'm talking about? So he had his clergy collar on, and as he got older and put on a little bit of weight, he definitely filled that clergy collar. Do you have the image in your head? I say this to the choristers all the time because they get it. So you want your neck, your idea of your neck to be as wide as possible, filling in your collar, wide and open. There's always the tendency to pull in, to be tight, to be gripped in your throat. And we want to think this direction instead, wide open throat. Next, our face and the release of our face. I start a lot of rehearsals with light taps of my face, moving to my jaw hinge, coming along my jawline, taking my thumbs, getting the floor of my mouth, here where your tongue is attaching, relaxing all of that. You're reminding yourself of home base, all right? So then, as you imagine the inside of your resonating area, all of this space is your resonating chamber, your speaker system. If your speaker system is kind of condensed like this, we said kind of sad puppy eyes, there's not a lot of resonating going on. So facially, Again, this is specific for when you're singing high. It's useful across the board, but I encourage singers that rather than anticipating high notes with this kind of activity, that it's a serene but focused face. Serene face. Again, it's just about not adding extra tension to what's happening in your neck. All right, so we've thought a lot about we've done kind of a scan of our whole body, going for openness, release, fullness, rather than restriction. All right, focused all the way down. All right, so next, let's do a little bit with breathing and with some noise making. We're gonna start off by doing some panting. You're used to that, I'm sure. And this is a prime moment to think about your ribs. It's going to happen naturally as you try to pant. As you pant, you'll be aware that your rib cage is elevated, hovering over your lungs, and you'll feel your abdominal, your diaphragm doing slight bouncing. What's really wonderful is that there's action down low and there's a hover in your rib cage, not a grip, but a hover. So try it. Yeah, okay. So that, for me, that's a good first. Am I open and am I engaged? It's also when I have a big solo coming in the middle of a piece and my headspace isn't good, I'm in a nervous place, I do just a couple small pants to get myself aligned. So, I mean, useful in real life right there. All right, so panting. Next, think about those back ribs expanding across your back. Take a breath in through your nose and expand those ribs. Go. And then hiss, keeping those ribs expanded while you're losing air. So what's happening under your ribs is a slight rolling up sensation as you're running out of air, but your ribs are staying expanded. That makes it easy or easier to then bring in more air without your body doing extra work because you've collapsed and then you have to press back out again, keeping that expansion. It is also that we'll talk about this when we look at some real choral examples. Retaining the expansion in your rib cage is so helpful in how you get from one pitch to another without a bump. The bump, and I bet you know what I'm talking about, when you throw your voice one direction or another and the note hits and then it bounces. So I bet you have a clue what I'm talking about. This expansion of the rib cage, that sensation is directly useful in that moment to trying to solidify your line, keeping your support absolutely stable throughout a line that moves in a variety of ranges throughout your range. All right. So we've done our hissing with our ribs, breathing in through our nose, and then hiss. And just reminding yourself after you've done some panting to get things activated, that hiss brings you back to sort of a serene place. And you're checking, where is that hiss living? Is that hiss living low in my neck? Or is that hiss living up in my resonating area, right in this mask area? Because surprise, this is the zone of your high note singing, not this. If this is active, there are going to be lots of extra sounds that are going to kind of creep in. So reminding yourself where that resonating is going to happen. Okay, so now I promised you some car warm-ups because let's be honest, normally sopranos don't get quite enough, do we, in our warm-ups? Even, in choirs. I love choral, all the choral conductors in my life. I am one. There's not enough time to thoroughly warm up a soprano. So you need to prepare yourself as you are on your way to rehearsal, if at all possible. So you're sitting in your car, you're on I-5. You've got your seat warmer on, maybe? Oh yeah. And your back is right against your car seat. Yes? What a great opportunity to work on that expansion of your back ribs. You can pant there. You can feel a little bit of push against the car seat. Then you're going to make in the privacy of your own car, you're going to make some absolutely wretched sounds. Are you ready? All right. So you're going to say things like, yow, yow. That yow is bringing your resonating right to the front of your face. Yow. So you can try that in your own home right now. Yow, yow. And you're moving through your range. You're starting lower with a really bright vowel that kind of helps you set the stage. And then the yow is sort of a hug for that upper register, but requiring forward resonance through it. But because it's a yow, there's plenty of back space too. Yow, 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 as you move up and over the top. Next, some nastier sounds. Okay. Nah, nah, nah. A lot of the time, we are not going to warm up a choir with quite that bright of a sound. But unless you're going to suck a lot of the sound back, where it lives really far back, that's probably not the most efficient way to sing your high notes, and you've got to get some of that forward going. So, nyas, that kind of a sound. Nah, nah, wah, wah. And while you're making that noise, you're also just checking in with what is necessary in your abdominal area for that to happen. And you're going to feel just a little each time. Wah, wah, wah. I hope this isn't too loud in everyone's ear. I sent my husband and my daughter away, so they didn't have to be present for this noise making, though they're kind of used to it.
You're fine in my speakers, Rebekah. No worries.
Okay, good. Thank you. Right. All right. So we've got those kind of ugly sounds. Now at the cathedral, when we're working with the kids, a lot of the time we say it's your Wicked Witch of the West sound. Ha, 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 and your little dog too, which is good for me. I'm a Kansas girl, so Wizard of Oz is useful. But that focus of waking up the front of your face and also moving through whatever bumps you feel as you're moving through that. So, I'll back up for a second and say those depending on the time of day you're warming up, how much you've spoken that day, you may need more or less of this kind of phonating. For me, this morning as I warmed up, I could tell there were moments where my voice kind of came in and out. And so I just touched it again. I touched that lightly, and tried to figure, was there a bump on my way up? Was there a little kind of distortion? Maybe I had something on my folds. I don't know, but that's a great opportunity to just check in. Or wah, wah, and move through your range sort of at the front steps of your range. Sometimes I'll encourage people to just consider, are you taking the front steps up and down, or are you taking the back steps up and down? And really we want somewhere in the middle. So you've got a lot of that round resonance, but you also have a lot of the ping that gives you some ease and volume throughout your range. Okay. So those are some of those nasty car warm-up things. On to our friend, the lip trill, which is the salvation of so many singers. The back pressure that is created by that lip trill is really important as you're figuring out the firmness within your trunk. So do that lip trill throughout your range, starting a little bit lower, then going a little higher, and keep stretching your range with that lip trill. Again, you'll notice the hiccups. You'll notice the spot where, oh, I couldn't couldn't quite get through that. I stopped and then I could start again. And that is a great moment of insight into where in your range there's a tendency for your support to go away. So let's go back to your ribs, back and front. Are they remaining expanded throughout that lip trill without a deflation moment? And if anything, thinking growing outward as you run out of air on those lip trills. So I find that just singing through the edges of a range that I am about to sing in a rehearsal with my lip trill is just the recipe to get myself situated well for that rehearsal. So I'll look at the repertoire and I'll think, all right, what's the high moment? What's the low moment? And I'll work that range, singing those moments in the repertoire on a lip trill. And it's miraculous, the amount of warming up that happens just through lip trill singing of those extended parts of your range in your repertoire, to remind yourself of that. Okay. I'm going to teach you one extended warm up in just a second. We're going to do a couple other really small things. I like to use a meep sound and a beep sound to get the in-between space between pitches, between notes, solid. So for instance, meep, 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 and feeling, it's not about the sound as much as it is the feeling in your body between sounds. Now, why does this matter for high singing? It's because a lot of the time you sing a lick, you have a rest, and then you come back in that same, like an F or a G or something like that. And if your body drops in between those two moments and you lose the firmness in your trunk, it's very hard to find the same place. So having this little exercise, meep, 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 forces you to keep the sturdiness in your trunk. Now up top, rather than using an M that sits kind of hard up high, I do more of a beep sound, like that's an F. Beep, 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 beep. And you're feeling the trunk sensation of your body being firm, but you're also feeling now, where is that sound living as I start my sound? Beep, beep, beep. All right. A lot of the times with the kids, I use the example of what tear duct is that note coming out of? So those beep exercises help you in your own physiology figure out, where am I feeling the most vibration in that range? And it gives you something to aim for. Beep, beep, beep. So those, again, you can do them super fast. You can do them in the car. It's just an aligning of your ears, your sensations, and your breath. Okay? All right, couple of others. And forgive me, it seems like it's kids stuff, but I do it for a reason. We do ghost sounds, and this is what it sounds like. Those big swirls of kind of vibrato and moving, very, very smooth movement throughout your range, but without grip, right? So with me, you can give me your ghost hands if you want to be a chorister. Ready? And you'll notice my mouth is opening the higher I go, but it is not overly open. It is not, right? As soon as you go to a place of overstretch for those notes with your face, that creates a lot of tension. So as I said at the beginning, that serene look, openness, space between your back teeth, but not trap door, okay? So we've got ghost sounds, and last but not least, along the lines of the ghost sounds where it's releasing your neck, it's making sure that after you've done a lot of lip trills where there is some constriction, that back pressure creates a little bit of tension at times, to be reminded of that really gentle, smooth, but sort of shaking of your voice is helpful. And then just the check of hot air on the back of your hand, which doesn't work great during mask times. Whatever, you can do hot air in your mask and just hope that whatever you ate isn't disgusting. So hot air. So you feel how wide open your neck is as you move through, sending your air up. Okay. Now here's the one warm up I'm going to do with you. And I stole this, of course, from my wonderful teacher, Nancy Zylstra. And I find it to be such a useful warm up. It's a bit long, so I'm going to sing it for you a couple times, and I'll explain several things to you as we do it. Okay, let me sing it to you once. I'm going to start on middle C, which is the so going to an F, which is your do. That's your key. Okay, and it goes like this. C, O, E, A, C, O, E, A, C, O, E, A. Now I've started it really very low, but the wonderful thing is this is a great warm up to access your high register, but I'm grounding myself down lower. So for those that are interested, if you're taking notes, I'm going to give this to you in numbers, all right? So low, a low 5 or so, up to mi or 3, down to do or 1, and all the way back down to 5. That low 5 is kind of our home base, actually. Then you start over again, low 5, up to 4, fa, down to re or 2, down to so on number 5, and finally an octave, 5 all the way up to high 5, down to mi, all the way down to low 5, so, and back to do. 5, 3, 1, 5, 5, 4, 2, 5, 5, 5, 3, 5, 1, and you finally get to do. There. So here are the words for it. There's a method to my madness here, and I hope that you'll stick with me because it's worth it. C, O, E, A, and that's the pattern. C, O, E, A, C, O, E, A. That warm up, you can move through, and by traveling on the old vowel, you experience all the way the same vowel shape and the way that it's morphing through your range. Let's move it up. C, O, E, A, C, O, E, A, C, O, E, A. How about a bit higher? And as we move up in our range, let's do our best operatic impression right now. All right, see, and you're going to swirl your way from one note to another, never with a sort of forced movement, but really released. Here we go. C, O, E, A, C, O, E, A, C, So there was a lot of vibrato in my sound, as I moved through my range there. But I would encourage you with that warm up to enjoy the motion and feel what it feels like as you approach the upper note and then as you come off of that upper note. All right. I don't want to take any more time with warm-ups. I see I've taken quite a bit of time, but I think that those are all elements that are really going to serve you well as you move into repertoire. I'll quickly ask if there are any questions right here before we move into some repertoire examples.
I don't see many questions from folks, but I do want to reiterate something that you've brought back several times, which is great, is that these, and you phrase it so beautifully, to go high, you must be grounded low. So even when sitting in the car, that all of these things which is great. I always tell people not to sing in the car because the acoustic is unfavorable, blah, blah, blah. I am happy to be wrong.
Well,
it's a little early in the morning for me to be wrong, but that's okay.
Oh, that's very gracious of you. That's very gracious of you.
But that it requires that basis and it requires that expansion of the ribs, that every step. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't do a lot of repertoire singing in the car. I make the ugly noises in the car and I check in with my range and my breathing in the car. So that I'm not trying to sing with a recording and compete with it. That leads to a whole host of things.
Right.
Okay. So if that's all, Gary, sounds good. Should we?
One other we do have a question there, which is better than mine and mine can wait, is if you have, you talked about lip trills.
Yeah.
Do you have other favorite exercises for this purpose that are with the semi-occluded vocal tract?
Yeah, I mean, using a straw, buzzing through a straw was a really healing technique for me. It helped me move throughout my range with a lot more facility. So taking a straw and buzzing through that sort of an approach follows much the same rules, but very helpful.
And a straw is something you can keep in your car and keep in your in your folder. I see. You can't all see this, but so our previous session was our very own Scott Kovacs talking about these semi-occluded vocal tract exercises, and he's throwing so many exclamation points in the panelist chat, and rightly so. Rebekah, do you have these written, or can you perhaps compile this, share your notes for this after the session?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Yeah.
Cool.
I'd be happy to. Yeah.
That's great. All right, let's go on. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yes. All right. So, and I know that Scott has all the technical lingo that I do not have, and so I'm so glad that he came first, and now I'm able to just give how I imagine it in my body. Seriously, Scott, wonderful. So, okay. Next, I want to hit on a couple of things, and we'll try to do it in the context of real repertoire. But just a moment before I do that, I want to say, dear sopranos, dear high singers, there is a lot of vulnerability that happens when you are singing so far out of your speaking range, when the vibrations happening in your body and in your head make it very difficult to hear what comes beneath you, right? What the basses are singing that is supposedly grounding the intonation. I just want to say openly how I understand and commiserate to some degree about both the glories of singing high and the challenges. And there's so much that goes into conductor's personal approach to the kind of sound that they want. Do they want vibrato? Do they want perfectly straight? Somewhere in between. We're going to hear a little bit of those examples in our work together now. But and the final sort of moment of commiseration with you is that I know for me, I found my really high notes when I was very little playing with my dolls. And I would talk like this all the time and play like this all the time. And it was a really gentle sound. I hear my 2.5-year-old daughter doing it all the time. So those were my child vocal folds, right? My child physiology. The bummer about being a singer, unlike so many other musicians, is that our instrument from day to day is never the same. it's impacted by so many things. I'm sure my wonderful colleagues have said the same thing in some of these other sessions, but I'm saying it as a sort of peace be with you moment, that you are singing on an instrument constantly changing due to a variety of factors, and age is a big one. So I am now singing on 42-year-old chords that have had a baby. And this is a very different instrument than I was singing on when I was 23 or 24 and had just started singing with tutor choir, or when I was a college kid, or when I was a junior high kid who could sing really high. So that morphing of your own instrument, just be gracious with yourself. And there is requirement that comes into this. As a kid, if those high notes came easy to you, it's very likely that you did not need to incorporate a lot of great singing technique to be able to move into that part of your range. And hopefully someone gave you that technique to undergird your singing. But if not, there are probably some habits in how you approach high notes that, as your voice ages, will not serve you well. And that may be why you're interested in this session, right? How do I keep adapting? So I spent such a big chunk on those warm-ups because it's trying to put together how you can sort of reacquaint yourself daily with your new instrument and where you are that day, and have the technique to support from underneath what you're trying to do in your upper register. All right, so my blessings on all of you. Okay, so next we're going to look at some real world examples. Hopefully you'll chuckle a little bit, especially about the first one. So we're going into Christmastide, and so such a famous example of some high note singing. I'm going to move it. We'll come back to that one in just a second. Well, actually, no. Are you? Let's stick with this one. There, you know this, I'm sure. So this is the David Wilcox, "O Come All Ye Faithful" descant. And we're going to enjoy listening to a little bit of this, and just to reacquaint yourself with it, and then together explore it vocally. So if you will allow me to find my spot in this. We tested this earlier, and it appears that my playback volume is quite low. So you might want to turn up your volume to hear this, but you know it well. All right, so here we go. All right, well, how familiar are we with that? Probably most of you are quite familiar with it. So that was, just out of interest, the Trinity College, Cambridge choir. So those are college kids singing that. And so first of all, what's the age that we're dealing with? And how many singers are singing on that part? I want to talk about volume. When you were little and you had a child voice and you could perhaps hit those high notes easily, it was with a very gentle, pure sound without a lot of effort. It also wasn't very loud, quite possibly. Now, when we get to this descant, I don't know about you, but I just want to sing the snot out of it because I love it so much. And what ends up happening in my body is a lot of push, 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 to the point that I overblow those high notes, and sometimes very little comes out because I'm actually pushing so hard. So let's reinvest in what we were talking about at the beginning, with that stability within your rib cage, the expansion of your abdominal area, and the rootedness down, and the somewhat placid and serene face and body through this. I'm not saying you don't get to enjoy it, but I'm saying that that sort of wah kind of sound does not serve you vocally very well. You want stability in your trunk, but not crazy effort. All right, so as you move through this, sing chorus all day. All right, so we've got this. I picked this not just because we know it so well, but because there's a lot of text. You're singing quite a bit of text as you're moving through your range and up to the high notes. And you hear all the time, oh, don't worry about your diction. And I would agree with that. Don't worry about your diction when you're singing high notes. But I want to take it a step further and say that not only are you not going to worry about your diction, but what you are worried about is consistency of line. So this is a great example of something to practice with your lip trill. And what happens if you can't sustain that? That's a great moment for you to say, oh, okay, maybe I need to breathe more, or I need to pay attention to the firmness in my in my trunk. Now, as we move through, sing. Let's go to our big sing. Sing in exaltation. In my mind, I'm running those notes together. They are not pluck, pluck, pluck. They're vowel to vowel to vowel. And I am thinking not up, but forward. Singing. That's a note farther away from me rather than higher from me. This is really, if I can leave you with something, I really want to encourage you to not think too much vertically as you're singing high notes, but think horizontally. The difference, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. The difference in your vocal folds between a high note and a low note is minuscule. The actual physical shift in your vocal fold is so small. And if your body is treating that jump as if it is a mile up there, your whole body is going to take on effort that your little vocal folds do not need. So thinking horizontally that note is just a little farther this way is still in your resonating space right here. Sing in exaltation. And I'm really paying attention to how the vowels meet each other. For example, back to our warm-up. How do I transition between those vowels? There's no break. And just because there are consonants written, think of those vowels as your long, I've used this all the time, so some of you are like, yeah, I heard it before, Gilmore. Your long clothesline with clothespins of diction attached. But the clothesline is that run of vowels that is absolutely sustained. Because if I sing in exaltation, I'm giving little puffs to each one of those notes. No, run it together. There's a reason that the sort of portamento style, right? That movement through, where you actually slide your way between pitches, that is efficient use. So even though we're not using as much vibrato and as much kind of motion or swirl in our sound, we're being really aware of the way that the vowels meet. Sing in exaltation. All right. So now let's look back at this screen one more time and move on. So I want to go to this glorious moment. Ha, glorious moment. I didn't even mean to. So a g. Get rid of that thing. You don't need that. If anything, put a little k, and the L is gentle if absent, perhaps, to approach that top note. Now I want to encourage you. Let's look here. You have a breath, right? What is the character of the breath going to be before this entrance? The character of that breath has that elevated rib cage. You haven't released your rib cage from heaven above. Hover and take your breath in. And that O vowel is obviously modified a bit more towards an ah, as you and you can close it a bit as you come down in your range. Vowel modification is your friend, and often choral conductors are very, very on to recommend it to you. So enjoy that leniency in vowel modification. In the highest, I'm going to use this as an example because we're getting late on time here, I think. I want to use this last word as an example of a modification moment. Okay, highest. Highest. When you say it, often there's a drop. Just say it to yourself, highest, right? You feel it kind of drop down in the back of your throat. And that's going to create challenges both for your placement and for your breath support. So a great modification that I learned, Nancy, among many others, is to give a brighter vowel edging towards an E. Highest. So I'm thinking E and singing and it keeps it situated in this same part of my face. Okay, good. So I'm going to stop for a second and see if there are some questions regarding that excerpt. I'm just using these excerpts to give a little bit of a couple of real life scenarios. Gary?
Nothing on this particular excerpt other than thank you for letting us all feel like true English folk for this, or maybe true Anglicans in your case.
Yes, right.
What a wonderful, wonderful example.
Yeah, such a great example.
And I'd say you're doing fine on time. Don't stress overly.
Okay, great. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good.
Some folks may have to leave early, and if you do, that's fine. And we'll be sending you the link for this all on YouTube. But this fantastic content. So
good. Rebekah. I'm so glad. All right, so let's look at another example. I'm going to pull out an old friend that so many of you will know, which is Os Justi by Bruckner. And this has this wonderful leap right here. Again, I apologize to those of you that are not sopranos. Hopefully this is really easy to make relevant in your own range, but I'm using soprano examples. It's the best for me to be able to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So let's listen to a little bit of Os Justi. And I just want to draw your attention to the recording I've chosen, which is Voices of Ascension, because it is a more, there's slightly more use of vibrato in the soprano sound. I think the age range is probably going to be a bit older than, for instance, the college kids singing in the Trinity College group that we listened to earlier. So we'll just listen to a little bit of this and then address some of what's happening here, particularly how one comes off of a high note. That's danger zone. All right, so enjoy this. Oh, did I hurt your heart? Because I just stopped it. Hurt my heart. Sorry. All right. So let's look at this just, dare I say, orgasmic moment. I'm sorry. But I mean, really, this is one of those that you live for. As we move through, I want to encourage again, what are you doing with your face for a high note? Is your face giving the like, ah, look? Or is your face more in that serene and relaxed, and internally in your mouth, the space between your back teeth is where that's happening. So it's interesting. I'm singing a big solo coming up in a week at St. Mark's, a new piece, and I recorded myself. I recorded the rehearsal, and what I noticed that I needed to work on is exactly what I'm about to tell you about. The high note that we see here, that A, the success of that is in many ways based on how you sing the E, how connected those E's are to that A. If you try to pop that A, there's probably going to be bounce to your sound. And by bounce, I mean the intonation is going to be sketchy until you reorganize your body underneath you for that high note. So if your body is going me, di, ta, that what happens up there is unconnected to the rest of your singing. And that organization does not have time to work itself out before you need to sing the high note. So medita, that high note is right here. It's right there. It is not up here. As you move off of that high note, we'll talk about that in a second, because that's very relevant also. But the solidity of those pitches that came right before. I grew up, I was trained in a choral technique where we like to talk about notes like medita, the medi there, as springboards. So I used to love that. Used it all the time. I'm not such a fan of that anymore, because springboard, you jump on a springboard to get up to the vault or whatever, right? Something disconnected, higher, lots of airspace in between. Instead, in your body, those pitches are utterly connected. So if I'm about to sing this lick, which I do all the time, those 2 beats of rest prior to medi, I'm checking, are my ribs expanded? Am I hovering on that pillow of air and then coming in on that pitch from that place of hover? Because if my body is not hovering and I go medi and then push up, the work has long since passed that needed to be done. So you've got your cushion of air and that medita. I would encourage you to try out some of these sorts of actions with yourself, whether it's that sort of stepping stone out in front. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that you can see some of what I'm doing. But having this sort of sense of paint right here at the level of your top teeth. Medita, right? That right here, rather than somewhere else. It's right here. Medita. Now, danger zone, coming off of a high note. You've given so much effort to get up there, right? And every soprano in the world, more times than they can count, has gone, oh, I made it. And then your body lets down its guard. Your line is not yet done, my friends. So that consistency of elevated rib cage, of smooth, serene singing, has to also take you down that scale. The downward motion after a high note is always where the soprano sections lose it. So you've just anchored in those first couple pitches. You've from there, made your way up to that upper note, farther away, and then pull those notes back to you as you come back down your range. This is related to those warm-ups that I did, those because if you had a blip in your voice as you did those CEOs, you very likely may experience a similar blip as you're moving down through your range, and there may be a part of your tessitura where it's your passaggio, or it's a spot where your voice has to shift gears a little bit, and what undergirds that must remain so stable, or the pitch will be wonky. So often, the pitch after a high note, whatever comes next, is going to be flat because of that. I did my job. I got my money note. So do be aware of how you leave those high notes, and keeping that sense of placid, pillowed support underneath those rib cage really elevated. All right. Any questions about that section as we go? Gary?
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, it's possible the second tenor part may partly in that moment may address this tenor moment being also one of the great glories of tenordom, just as it is sopranodom. The question is how to proceed from high notes, then when you have to go to low notes in your range, but keep the same quality. Often that happens even when you're exposed, the line is exposed. There were some in the Wilcox too. There's the one jump to the low D. That's weird.
Are you talking about the? Oh yes, actually, I love that moment. I love that moment.
Because it helps set up another.
That's so true. That is so true.
Any of those examples would work. Maybe the Wilcox better.
Yeah. I would love to bring back the Wilcox. Hold on, I need to bring it back. Let's see. I've got it right here. Okay, let's bring that back, because I think that's, it's such a good question too.
Yeah.
All right. So Gary, are you talking about this O come business, or are you talking about here, the citizens of heaven?
Kind of that one, yeah. The question is about how to kind of leap lower in a way, and ideally stay there for some time, was the question specifically, but really even just touching on it and moving on is fantastic.
Yeah. All right, so first order of business is, again, releasing yourself from a vertical thought process. And as you move down lower in your range, you are going the relax. It's interesting. Sopranos, I know, suffer from this, and I bet other voice parts do as well.
Not tenors.
Of course not. Never tenors. Perfection from the tenors. But as you're singing up high, there's so much sort of organized under you to make that happen, right? And as you come lower in your range, the tendency is to end up singing really rather sharp down low, or the opposite of letting everything go and digging for that low note. The point is that it doesn't, we do need to reorganize sort of the effort as we move lower in our range. And I would, in this lick, for instance, I would highly encourage that low note, that D on the word of, that if you're perched, sort of you're hovering, right? You've got your lungs, your ribs elevated, that you're looking down at that low note, or maybe just out a ways at that low note, but you're looking from the perch of where is your energy mostly focused in this descant, and that energy is going to be right around that D, right? Sing, all ye citizens of heaven. So you just look down, touch that low note, and notice I'm not digging for it. I'm not taking a lot of energy to it, and I'm sending it farther out this way. And some of that is about brightening the vowel to make sure that it doesn't sink back in your person, right? But brightening it, and maybe thinking of it as with a little less effort so that we don't overblow that pitch. I'll also say that those are great moments, sidebar, especially when you're singing in a choir that demands a fair amount of straight tone. As you go lower in your range, that's a great time to give a little shimmer a little bit of vibrato to allow some relaxation. Now, I'm not talking about collapse within your trunk, but a little bit of relaxation through here. And citizens of heaven above. So anyway, just a light touching of those low notes. Now, if you're going to live down there for a while longer, like Gary was mentioning, in a, you know, if this was a slightly different excerpt, if you're living down there, then that release, open throat, that kind of sense of hot air, just to reorganize and be able to live there, but always being ready to keep the line stable, the vowels kissing vowels all the way through, so that your air is constantly going without consonants getting in your way. I hope that's helpful. Yeah,
that's great. No, that's great.
Yeah.
I'd add another example along these lines that we've all sung, the "For the Lord God Omnipotent."
Oh, for sure.
You know, we've all done that gear shift.
Yep.
And I think what you're doing by singing there and just looking a little down, just tapping it in a way is
That's exactly, yeah.
But it keeps the line going. That's
right.
The crucial part.
Yep. And keeping your facility all ready for where you're going back to, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. Let's proceed.
Great. Okay. So next, I have two more examples, and I think, well, because this, yeah, we'll do. I think this will be familiar to so many of you. Even so, Lord Jesus, quickly come. So this piece, I picked this piece because it's a great example of something that I love, but that I dread because of, so you'll notice the soprano range, for instance, in this is it's very comfortable, living in a great spot. Okay, fine. I'm just scrolling through, fine range. Oh my gosh, high B flat. On the word for. So let's, we're going to listen to this segment just so that you can get your head in the space. If you're unfamiliar with this piece, here you go. I'm going to just move us through to this moment in the piece. This, for what it's worth, this is the National Lutheran Choir, a big choir, tending to have a darker sound than some of the groups we've listened to already, just for what it's worth. All right. I hope many of you know this marvelous piece. So what I love about this example, it's stretching our range even higher, isn't it? And as we move up to the B flat, I also want to address briefly, before we talk about the actual high note, is coming down off of something like that. And you'll notice you come down off of it, oh my gosh, you have to go back to it. Coming back down, and then your next entrance, you hold this and your next entrance is at a piano. And my experience has been that my heartbeat is beating for a B flat, a high B flat, and I have to do a certain amount of, so that I'm ready to come in at a piano with a smooth, gentle sound there that is no longer bringing any of the excitement, shall we say, of the high part. So some of it's a head game, guys. It's really a head game. So as you move up through this, I want to use this as a great example of a hovering breath. I think this is key, and it's going to, we get to use it twice. So you're singing, right? and you're on a fortissimo. So there's already a lot of energy and a lot of air happening. But as you take your breath, rather than going, oh my gosh, it's a B flat, I better tank up, trust yourself. High notes don't take that much air. They don't take that much air. It's sort of like an oboe, where oboes more often than not have to stop playing to exhale before they can take in more air, right? There's so much kind of pressing back. So as you've sung up, and you've got that moment, keep this relaxed here, but just top off your air from that place of hover so that you can come back in. I want to sing it in tune for you though. Okay. So that hovering breath is going to come into play again in the next spot leading into the B flat. If your choir director lets you breathe there, they may or may not. Let's try it. So your body retains all of that elevation, even as you're taking in more air. The illustration I like to use, it works for me. I don't know if it ever, let me know if it works for you. You know how you fill a cup, when you were little, you probably did this. You filled a cup of water and you looked at the top of it and you could just see that sort of bubble at the top of your cup. You know what I'm talking about? So that little bubble at the top of water, and if you filled it any further, it would spill over, right? So if you're thinking about your water glass is full, it's relatively full because you're expanded. You've already expanded your ribs. You're going to take in just enough air to kind of fill up over the top, just a little bit, and then sing off of that. So you're not having to fill your cup full, you're just topping it off. So let's do that one more time. Sing with me if you feel so inclined. As we go through that, you'll notice that the diction is really pretty gentle. I don't mind Fs, that F sound getting me situated for that vowel, but the amount of space kind of in here is really helpful. If I were to critique myself just then, I might encourage a little bit more roundness from myself. This is a good opportunity to use this illustration. I think about this placement a lot, pulling the note out of the front of my face, but I also like to blast it out the back of my head too. So there's a roundness and depth to it. There are certain conductors who want a super bright sound that will like peel paint. There are other conductors that want a very warm sound. There are other conductors that want a very simple sound. And so we're striving for, to be able to have that whole palette available to us of a very simple sound. So any questions about this excerpt? Mama. Oh, my daughter's home. Any questions?
Somebody has a question back there, apparently. No, I'd say keep on going. We're probably nearing the end of the desired time, but one more quick example should be fine. That was fantastic on that B flat. I wish that computer microphones and Zoom technology could do justice to the tones that I know you're producing up there, because I hear them in my head. So
I know it's hard, isn't it? It is hard. I'm sorry about that.
We should get you a boom mic as well and just switch back and forth for the sounds.
Right.
All right. Let's keep going.
Good. All right. So the last example that I'm going to share is many of you know that Renaissance polyphony has been my love for a long time, and so I'm going to address when you have to live much higher for an extended amount of time. It's so funny. Many of you maybe you know the work of John Tavener and the contemporary composer. The contemporary composer John Tavener. And I heard a quote once that you're singing Tavener as a soprano if there's blood dripping down the back of your throat. No, you don't want that. You don't want that. But that's a comment about how high that tessitura is and where you're just living up there. So I'm going to give you a little John Shepherd. I'm going to give you some of Media Vita, which is a really extended, exciting work, and but one that has to live pretty high. And I'll just play you a bit of that here. I'm trying to find my own screen with it. I think you're looking at it. There. All right. Now this is at high pitch, and I'm going to give you the Tallis Scholars recording of it. Yes, you'll just hear how they move between these really high pitches that have to kind of live up there. So enjoy a little bit of Media Vita. All right. I'd love to play the whole thing for you. But all right. So a good example of a lot of melismatic writing on one syllable, one vowel, moving throughout the range. And I find it's a great example of having these drop down moments where you're perched, you just gently look down, and then you have to loft back up again. So when you have these melismas that are moving through your range, you become really aware of where that vowel is living and where it is most resonant depending on your range. And so what you're going for is, can you have a lot of buzz no matter where you're at in your range? So for instance, let's look right here at this example. So you've been sitting pretty high. So as I move right here down to that B, I'm already aware that I'm moving that sound slightly more forward. I'll say into my nose. I don't mean like ha ha into my nose, but I'm just pulling it forward so that it stays as pingy as it was up high. It's in the same general vicinity. And then I have to tank back up again. So the amount of effort that I'm giving this area right here is important. I'm about to take a breath, so I don't want a lot of push to get back up to that note. So we're again thinking down, lower is out. And then moving up, back up to the range. So a lot of the time I describe this kind of high singing where you're living pretty high is I'm putting my voice up on a shelf and I'm not straining for it. It's sort of like I've put it up there and I'm living there and moving sort of within that, up on that shelf. And when there's a low note, I kind of peer down off of it and look down and touch that low note, but I'm living up on that shelf. Yeah, through here, you see, this is such a good example of where one's energy can wane. So you've just sung, on that dotted quarter. You want to have a slight feeling of increased energy, but without grip, So are you singing off of that pillow of air, or are you kind of clenching in to force up? You want to be singing off of the pillow. All right, anybody see anything in here? I just wanted to give an example of sitting in that upper tessitura, but with melismatic writing. I'm happy to now take any questions that people have.
Thank you very much for that last example. Because I know when it comes to hitting high notes, I'm used to be called a high tenor, but I found that I could hit the notes, sure, and I could last for a bar.
Yeah.
And then I was done. I had to rebreathe, re-articulate, reassess the situation.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
I hope it was helpful. Yeah, I find that a useful mindset through there.
Yeah. I'm not seeing any questions. So this has been astonishingly informative. Thank you, Rebekah.
I'm so glad.
The way you connect imagery with physiology, you talked about, it was really meaningful. So thank you for that. I mean, we have our big vocal anatomy series that we've done 3 sessions of already, which can help to clarify maybe some of the terminology of what's going on in there. So thank you for rooting that into the way the human mind works.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I hope it's helpful to everyone. And again, you just have my blessing as we all are navigating. I mean, we're all out of shape, right? Coming out of the pandemic, we're all vocally out of shape, and so we're learning our instrument in even more profound ways than we would have in our day-to-day relearning. And the mask, I didn't even get into the mask singing, the way that singing with a mask really affects what you're able to hear and the sensations you have and the tendency to push, especially in that high register. So all things that we're all learning about together right now.
Yeah, good.
Good.
Yeah, we're definitely at our time now. Thank you, Rebekah and Scott. Thank you to all of our participants for your great questions and your contributions today. The next offering of the Emerald Choral Academy will take place on December the 18th, when your instructor will be yours truly. Woo-hoo! Discussing, this is one of my kind of topics too, editions, what they do and what they don't. So my purpose will be to unveil the mysteries of the printed score. Every score does some things well, but it can't do everything for you. So I'll reveal a bit about the job of a music editor, the decisions they make, how they help, and how singers can help to overcome those editions that may be less than ideal, which I think we've probably encountered. So we at the Emerald Ensemble are grateful for the enthusiasm of you, our audiences and supporters, both here in person and Zoom, and also online. As the Emerald Choral Academy continues, you can help to support these efforts by donating at emeraldensemble.org. You can also let us know topics that you would like to see discussed in the future. And I'll add that we are right now planning season 4 to begin next year. So this is a perfect time to send us your thoughts. In the meantime, I am Gary Cannon on behalf of Scott and Rebekah and all of the Emerald Ensemble. I wish you good physical, mental, and musical health. Thank you.